Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Beechwood Organization, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman and Wakefield, the Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Markham LLP, Marcus Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Moynihan Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, Sterling and Sterling, Urban American, the Wickoff Group.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. So here we are in the fall of 2010, and all these signs, the stars are aligning that the office market is really looking well. But about a year ago or 2 years ago, if I had these four wonderful guests, I would probably say that, we would, depending on the religion, if you were Jewish, we were at a Shiva. If you were Catholic, you were at a wake. And that's how bad the office market is. So today, I've assembled these four individuals, good friends and leading experts on the market, to provide their insight on the office market in New York City. My guests today include Joseph Arbert, the COO of the tri-state region of Cushman & Wakefield; Norman Sterner, the managing member and co-founder of Murray Hill Properties; Jeffrey M. Sussman, the executive vice president at Edward J. Minskoff Equities, INC; and last but never least, the guy who enjoys the Jets and the Michigan games, the president of the tri-state region for Newmark Knight Frank, David Falk. So since we were talking about the Wolverines and everything, do you think we have a winning season in the New York market?
Well, you're not referring to the Jets, so we're not discussing football.
No, we're going to. We're doing college.
I'm still having a hard time with that.
I know.
So the New York market, I was trying to think: is it a brunch? Is it which means you could have some bagels and coffee and enjoy yourself. It's not a celebration. It's a lot of things that are almost sub-markets within the whole topic. The overall market is actually down 7% for asking rents a year ago, but yet taking rents in certain parts of the city, I know when I compare it to a year ago, they're higher today, and the concession packages are lower. So you need to go through this information to really to dissect what the answer is. We see it as big tenant market, fairly competitive; small tenant market, tight; medium-sized market, very quiet.
Let's not play inside baseball. Let's identify what those three different categories are on the size needs. And, big tenant market.
Big tenant's over 100,000 feet.
Next.
Small tenant market under 15,000 feet. But you have we don't see the market for a one-off floor by itself, 30,000 feet, 40,000 feet. You want to look at 3rd Avenue, Park, or 6th Avenue, the brokers don't have the tenants. That tenant really is looking to save money, and to build out space for 30,000 feet is a big undertaking. The big tenant, you can't build space for 200,000 feet. You have to rebuild if you're going to move. Small tenant, the landlords are building for them. The mid-sized tenant, it's kind of an in-betweener.
Look, the CoStar report for the first 6 months showed that there were 22 tenants who signed leases for over 100,000 square feet. There were 50 tenants who signed leases for over 50,000 square feet. It's a very positive sign.
It's a very active market. As David said, the market for tenants over 100,000 square feet has picked up measurably. We've already leased year-to-date in Manhattan more space in the first 8 months of this year than was leased all of last year. That's pretty impressive. We also looked at the number of deals that have been done, and it's the same trend. So I would agree that over 100,000 square feet, those tenants need to be in the market, and they also sense a buying opportunity. Right. It's a bargain market still.
Oh, wait,
it's a tenant market.
So, you know, I'm hearing that their leases are being signed, but it's still a buying opportunity. You're still seeing rents. I mean, when was the last time we saw rents in the mid-40s with a $60, $70 TI letter?
We were talking about this the other day in my office. In the early 90s, the most we had seen was $55 a foot in work. Today, a lot of tenants could find landlords to build them space or give them allowances for $75 a foot. It's not across the board, but it exists.
Now we'll talk to the landlord. So, what are you doing?
Some of the problem is that offshore, they're eating all of the resources. We went to get glass for 1250 Broadway, what normally would have been a 4-month order to do, got to be a year. Every square foot of glass was being requested from either China or India. So the reason that the $55 package has gone to $70 is not so much that the landlord needs to put more money into it. It's more expensive today. There are also less folks that are doing that work because they've simply gone out of business over the last 2 years, and that's unfortunate. The construction companies have just withered, the smaller ones anyway. But if you look, at least in our portfolio, we're running over 90% capacity, which is not to say we don't need tenants, which is not to say we're not looking every day to fill every single foot of space we have. But it's a very active market. There is nothing wrong with New York today that hasn't been adjusted upward from that 2 years ago when we sat here.
Now, prior to the show, you were saying that, you know, if there are a certain amount of jobs, and your colleague in crime, Bruce Mosler, always talks about jobs on my show. You know, if there are a large number of jobs created, and you mentioned also that one of these foreign banks said that they are going to create maybe 400 new jobs. If there are these jobs created, we're going to have the market's going to rebound to like 2005, 2006. You see that happening? You really believe that?
I think it's true. I mean, there's no new construction. The brokerage firms always put out these reports that say that a majority of the stock of buildings in the market today are pre-1970 buildings. Tenants today don't want to be in those buildings. The infrastructure is not there, the technology is not there, so they're starved to find the right type of building to be in. So I think that Norman's point earlier was right, is that, you know, there's going to be a frenzy to the high-class buildings, to the buildings that can accommodate the technology requirements and the space layout requirements that these tenants want. So I think you're going to see development again start. I think you're going to see buildings, an exit to higher class buildings for tenants, because it's going to be the only choice to attract these people, to have them employed in a way that, you know, allows them to make the money that they need to make. You know, it's the typical New York type of cycle. I think it's a real opportunity.
I mean, you have both categories. You have a building at 590 Madison Avenue, right on the corner, class building, top building, and you were saying that the top 3 floors you've recently put out for over $100 a square foot.
Absolutely.
And you were saying...
There is a market now, again, for space north of $100 a foot.
But going back to David's point, I think it's mostly 3, 5, 7, 10,000 square foot tenants today. Hopefully, as the market, as those spaces start to get rented, you know, the larger tenants will come back to those. You know, one of the points I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to ask Joe, is of all these deals that were done in the last 8 months, 100,000 square feet and greater, or 50,000 square feet and greater, how many of them were subleases and taking a lot of that sublease space off the market, where you had a lot of space where sublessors were looking to give big concessions and free rent and all that stuff, and space was already built to start. So a lot of that space got filled up, which is, I think, great for guys like Norman and I, who have new space, and our landlords, with direct space coming up soon.
Look, you had the Avon lease, which was a very large amount of space.
A tremendous amount of leasing on Park Avenue in the last.
But those were really
months.
opportunistic.
Absolutely.
Every one of those was getting it at 65 cents on the dollar because they were being subsidized.
What is Park Avenue today? I remember, I think it was early in the year, I had a group of guys. I had Mark from Cassidy Tully, and he was saying that you could get Park Avenue space like where you leased, 245 or 270,
right.
277 Park Avenue, and you were able to get space for $50, $60 a foot. Can you still get space on Park Avenue at that price?
But again, so that is not a retail, meaning a real rent from a landlord. It's being funded. Answer your question.
Yeah.
There's some markets on Park Avenue, a 450 Park, which we're involved in. We're doing some deals right now in the mid-90s. It's not to say across the board. That's a nice rent.
That's a healthy market.
It's a very healthy. But
And we're doing
a
deals
year
up in the
ago,
same neighborhood in the 80s.
right.
So.
A year ago, we were probably doing it at $10, $15 a foot less.
And what about, from the Chase properties at 277? What can a tenant pay on Park Avenue? On a subsidized basis.
I think it's still $60
A tenant doesn't
foot.
care
It's
where
still-
it's coming from. They want the subsidy.
We're
Tell me what
in
my
the same place. We're
It's
about
$60
$60 a foot. We're still-
But one thing about the market, these tenants, look at the media business. The media business is taking a hit in New York City. They can only pay so much. They're going to be prudent when they go out in their real estate. They may just renew. For a 200,000 foot tenant to relocate, it costs $30 million out of their pocket. If they're a foreign bank now, is that a smart move? Well, is the space antiquated? Does it work for you? These tenants are doing what they can to be financially prudent. So they're not just throwing money around.
They're also taking less space.
The right size.
For the most part.
I think that is something that you and I have discussed often. I even wrote an article about it, that companies are taking 22% less space in many situations. And look, the accounting firms are hoteling. They're using hoteling. The law firms are taking less space. One secretary is now taking care of 4 partners. The amount of administrative space is down, so the office spaces are down.
But the other side of that is that there's no new office space coming online.
How much is coming online in Lower Manhattan?
I don't think it's a price point yet for Lower Manhattan. I think the firms that need to be in Midtown Manhattan need to be in Midtown Manhattan. You make the price point differential between $50 or $60 on Park Avenue and $25 downtown, you're going to get people going downtown. Without it, there's no price differential to move somebody who needs to be in Midtown to go downtown.
What is the price going to be for buildings on the Trade Center, the new buildings? What's the projected rents?
You guys.
Well, we
what do you
represent
think?
someone, so we're actively talking to a number of tenants at this point.
I mean,
it's really pretty early to tell you what the rents are going to look like.
The 7 World Trade Center is going at $60 a foot for rent. So the new one obviously is going to go out at a higher number, but they have the advantage of being flexible based on what we talked about earlier. And so there's a lot of
people
demand.
want new buildings, as you said.
There's demand because a big tenant who needs 600,000 to 800,000 feet, where can you go? It's not sitting there waiting for you. You have to look at that. And so those tenants are all looking at that.
So now let's look at the situation. There's a lot of B space. You were talking tenants don't want to be in buildings that are past 1970. I go to Lower Manhattan, all I see is a lot of B space, where somebody can go in from maybe mid-20s.
Yeah, we're
Higher,
different.
but okay.
27 is the new number, I
Right.
think, downtown.
Yeah, but the other side of it is that TI package that you spoke about. To turn an old building into a new building, the CapEx package is as big as the TI package.
Norman, how does it make any sense? You hear these deals, $30 a foot in rent, absurd TI
years of-
packages.
2 years of
Let's just say $80 a foot in TI, 15 months free rent. Is it just to pay the tax and operating?
Well, you're paying the tax and operating now with an empty space in your building. So whatever you get comes to the bottom line. The problem that we have is trying to convince you guys, okay, we'll give you a 10-year lease, but that $30 rent is only for 3 years. And then you've got to kick up to where the market is. And you guys are fighting.
That's
to
an
do
uphill
that.
battle.
I like this. So what do you mean you want them to give a 3-year deal and he wants a 10-year deal for
Of
this?
course, he understands the marketplace. He understands now's the time to take advantage of us poor landlords. And what we're suggesting,
Wait.
what we're
Poor
suggesting,
landlords. I should have had Edward over here.
I don't recall this discussion when the market was booming the other way in 2007.
It was horrible. But, and that is exactly the point. This is simply another one of those cycles where we've come off the downside and it's starting on the upside.
Now, we have,
and in
you have a
3
great building
years-
at 101 Avenue of the Americas. Trinity Real Estate still has space down in Hudson Square. I mean, people could move down there. You know, talking about the media business, that's where the media business went. I mean, 1010 Wins, CBS, was at 888 7th Avenue. They weren't going to pay Steve Roth $110 a foot.
Right.
So they went down to 345 Hudson.
Right.
The market's been very hot, 200% leasing increase over last year.
Firms that can go down are doing it for price point.
Right. I mean, our building at 101, we can deliver space in January, February of 2012. We've had the space on the market for 60 days. We've had 4 major RFPs come in, proposals. We're still talking to 3 of the people. We're really surprised at how much interest there is. But again, when we built that building 20 years ago for the union, we built it really with the understanding that sometime in the future the union was going to move out, and we had to build a building that was going to be able to be leased in the future. So individual air conditioning units on each floor, each floor has power, fresh air. We're going to make it a LEED Gold building when we do the renovations. We've hired Skidmore, Owens and Merrill to do the lobbies and all the renovations.
Now,
that
what
we're
about
planning there.
51 Astor? Aren't you building at 51?
And we have a building at 51 Astor that we're planning on starting in June of next year.
And that's going to be an office building
It's
also?
going to be an office building also. It's 400,000 square feet, 42,000 square foot base floors, 25,000 square foot tower floors, 12 stories. And we have interest there too. And we haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, haven't even demolished the existing building. And, so we're seeing people who not only are looking for outside of the traditional locations, midtown, downtown, but the real draw to these buildings is the fact that the buildings are either planned or were built thinking ahead of what tenants are going to want in terms of power, air conditioning, control.
Now we
that
talk
type of
about,
stuff.
Norman was talking about prices are going back. People are becoming irrational, exuberance in certain of the pricings. Like at
I didn't say irrational.
No, 685. Very high prices for a vacant building. 510 Madison selling for $780 a square foot. 111 8th Avenue over probably selling for close to $750 a foot, but that's a different building because you have your tenancy and it's stabilized situation. I still remember that there is a building at 510 Madison Avenue with no tenants, and I think at 545 Madison, or the other building, which Elcor owns, is the only tenant I see is on the second floor is a beauty parlor.
Correct.
So
Salon.
a salon. I apologize. It's a salon. Okay, it's not the barber shop. I wrote this little article about the 99-cent pizza shops. They said you couldn't believe it. I said there are 14 of them. Salon. Okay. What's the rents in these new buildings, guys?
If
These 2 new buildings, Madison Avenue,
I think
not far from a beautiful building.
I think
of yours.
510 Madison
510
is going to do great now.
I do too.
There's clarity.
Absolutely. I agree.
God, everything is going to. It's a gorgeous
I passed
building.
it the other day, and the
As-
lobby looked
Wonderful location.
As Jeff said before, as far as new construction, the tenants do want floor-to-ceiling glass. They want column-free. They want efficiency. They want an image and a brand that it projects when you come off the elevator. That says it all. And I think now the tenants are going to go there, and you're going to see a tremendous amount of activity.
Are we going to see $80 a square foot? Are we going to see $100 a foot for that type of building?
I think, in my opinion, and they're kind of making a market today because it's new construction in that part of town. I think you're going to look at the base of that building probably in the high 80s, and it's going to hit over about 110 at the top. That's just my
So 80
feeling.
to 100. You're not far off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what about the
they-
other building, the Elcor building?
I think the floor sizes and the layouts of that property are what's held, and just poor timing is what's held the rents off on there. That's all. It's a funky size. That's all. But 510 is going to be a monster home run, and we'll all sit here in 3 years and say, "Oh my God, Boston Properties has hit another home run." And I believe that.
And do you
There's
think?
nothing
But
coming
Harry built a
online.
great building. I
Yes,
mean,
gorgeous.
you know,
No,
he knew everything that you needed
the
to do, and
building
he did it.
from
exactly.
outside. The lobby looks good. You know, as you say, the floor to ceiling. It's a prime location. You know, it's a great thing. And now a tenant says, "Hey, I got Boston Properties. I got a major, powerful REIT behind it.
In a
I don't
brand
have
new
to-
building,
In a brand new
well-located.
building. You know,
And the
I
first
want to
one
be
in
a
is
class.
getting a good deal.
You know,
Well,
it's good.
timing's
Take a look
everything,
at
right? I
What
mean,
Avi's done at 444 Madison,
Beautiful.
absolutely incredible. I mean, he picked up Burberry, he picked up TD. He's renting at $60 a foot.
But this is the one thing we get
Yeah,
to
but
say
that
here.
building, when Avi bought it, Avi was planning to rent it for $90 a foot.
He also bought it for a lot less than everybody else did.
You know, what I was saying is the brokers who represent these big tenants brought them into the market to take advantage of opportunities. These are tenants have leases expiring in 12 and 13. They're out there early. They committed terrific deals. But let's not kid ourselves. Their space is coming. It's not listed yet because it's too early. It's not in the statistics. So all the big deals you're talking about who are moving, that's not listed. So as much as there is leasing activity, and the brokerage firms like discussing that, absorption is negative in these because it's taking less space and it's coming.
There are two sites on 8th Avenue that we know of. You know, you have the Boston Properties site on 55th, 56th, where some of the foundation is already in, and then you have the other site which is out of Schubert and everyone else gave back that other site where Related was going to be building also with Boston Properties on 8th Avenue. Do you think that there is going to be new building on 8th Avenue taking place over the next 3 years or so? Because listening to what you're saying is
If the
there's
market
no,
turns, it will.
there's no office space, no brand new office space. People like LEED certified buildings. They want this type of situation. You know,
Have you seen the Related property on 10th Avenue? It just continues to grow. On 42nd Street?
yeah, but that's not an office. That's
I don't know what it is, but it's enormous.
But you like it.
It
grows. I pass it by from the tunnel.
Norman,
it grows every day.
Norman, it's about 1,100 apartments broken down into rental, into condominiums. It is a pod hotel for about 465 rooms, and it's humongous retail. I mean, that's what it is.
But that requires people. That requires people to come here. That requires people to spend money. That requires the economy to continue to grow.
I
This
did.
is
I
not
did.
a
I
photo
did a residential
snapshot.
show a couple of weeks ago, and it is hard to say, but the same thing like the office market. You know, concessions, rents. There are no more concessions. There's no more 2 free months rent.
What is that telling you?
That people are there. People are paying. People are renting. I mean, a year ago, you could go into Stuytown and rent an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment for $2,400, $2,500 with 2 months free rent. Today, I picked up an ad, $3,100, $3,400. TF Cornerstone on 505 West 37th Street. There is nothing there. They want $3,300 for a one-bedroom. Somebody's guaranteeing the leases.
And the census says that in the next decade, New York grows by 1 million people.
Yeah, we have a residential building downtown Norman. I didn't mean to cut you off, but a year ago we were renting apartments at 89 Murray Street. At $55 with 2 months concession. Now we're doing it at $63 with none. We used to send out renewal letters to people, and they would call back and say, "You got to be kidding!" Now they sign it literally the day they get it.
I know.
So,
I had the chairman of Africa Israel Investments USA on the show. He said I had a building at 88. I have a building at 88 Leonard. A year ago I was at 84% occupancy. I'm now at 99% occupancy, and I'm I'm giving nothing away.
Right.
So the market has turned. Now, where do you see? Because you're a buyer and a seller. You buy and sell all the time. We should call you a trader.
With a D.
With a D. Where do you see the prices of office buildings going these days?
We just contracted to buy 509 Fifth, and we're in the midst of an LOI to sell 1412.
509 Fifth at what price? Is it public? I mean,
Not yet. We're still in contract. But it was a fair price for Fifth Avenue. I mean, the retail was driving it.
Higher than it would have been a year ago.
Way higher.
509, who is the retail?
Baker Shoe. 1412, we have 2 viable letters of intent at prices that a year ago I couldn't have gotten. There's no space in town that's coming online that is going to hurt the absorption.
Yeah,
and if you go back to something that I said just for a moment, Michael, 1 million people in the next decade, that's 3 million meals a day. That's 150,000 apartments. That's 100,000+ jobs. This is New York City. It won't all wind up in Manhattan, but a lot of it will.
I always had this problem, saying that there are the small accounting firms, there are the small little companies, there are the nonprofits. Where are they going to get space today?
Well, again, we're not. I don't want anyone to take this broadcast to think that this is the tightest market.
It sounds like,
there's activity out there. It's getting better, but I think these companies are making more money because they have less expenses. They have less real estate. They have less employees. So understand that. And going back to your question about new buildings on 8th Avenue, that's assuming that a $200,000 tenant is going to commit to a $100 rent to build a new building.
3 years hence.
3 years hence.
I don't see that.
Yeah, but we still
today.
have space on 8th Avenue. You have still 400,000 square feet at 11 Times Square. You have space at Worldwide.
Worldwide's pretty much committed.
Yeah, it's committed by now.
Really?
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Great job, great building, and it made sense.
I mean,
I had heard the rumors, and I know Peter very well.
I had
but
Peter
I didn't
Duncan on the show earlier in the season.
Wow.
He didn't have anybody, and
No.
he believed. And look,
It goes back to the pricing. It's high quality at fair pricing, meaning it's not $80 a foot. It's, let's say, in the range of 50. Tenants want
That's
great
still
value.
terrific for
It's a
that.
value market.
It's a value market, high quality building.
it's a
though.
value market, and you have the Shake Shack right nearby.
There you go.
So
Did you do the deal, David?
We did one floor there, but I got to know the building. I've shown the building a lot. And everyone that sees it says, you know what? That's a beautiful building, but they're also saying that economically it fits into my parameters and it's high quality.
In 15 years or 20 years since the building's been built, Manhattan has moved
We've moved
that
west.
way.
Right.
And where it used to be, you were a pilgrim over there.
The west
now,
side, right.
the West Side has changed.
Right.
There's-
That's fine.
There's no question. So I'd like to say things are looking better. Things are progressing. The world is getting better. There's still opportunities for certain tenants. Prices are going up there. Let's just hope that the world remains stable over here. The banks, the securitization will help finance the acquisitions and the sales of buildings, and things will look better. And hopefully, within 6 months, I'll have you all back and you'll give me your projections and what's happening then. I'd like to thank Joe Harbert, Norman Sterner, Jeffrey Sussman, and David Falk. See you next week.
Thank you.
Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Beechwood Organization, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, the Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns & Gian Tomasi, Grubb & Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa & Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Markham LLP, Marcus Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Moynihan Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, Sterling and Sterling, Urban American, the Wickoff Group.